Good morning, everybody. My name is Simi, and I have with me here a wonderful panel. I have Shalini with me. I have Charusmitha from Akamai Technologies, Girija from Biocon, and Kavita from Diageo. Welcome. The topic for today's panel discussion is how to power women to thrive in the workplace. Now, this has two elements, right? One is what organizations do for women. The other is what women need to do for themselves. And a while ago, we heard Sunita speak about so many different things that we as women need to take in charge if we want to succeed in the workplace. So, my first question, and I would like each one of you to take a stab at it, is what are the two challenges that come in the way of women achieving their full potential? Would you like to go first, Shalini?
All right, good morning. So I think when I was listening to Sunita, it was like, okay, everything that she said was absolutely like a reflection of what each of us go through, when you go through your career. So I think the first, according to me, the first thing that I think all of us need to realize is to really reflect and look at what is it that we really want from ourselves, in our career. And there are people who, if you're happy being a homemaker, that's a great thing. I mean, that's what you want to do. If you want to be an entrepreneur, that's what you want to be. If you want to have a career where you're able to find enough flexibility and, you may not want to be, you don't want to be the next CTO or CEO, but you still want to have a stable career which you can, go through, for the rest of your life. That's a choice that you make. And if you decide that, I want to be at the top of the game, then it's a completely different thing. So a lot of us actually never give a thought to what is it that we really want from our career. It comes as an afterthought. I want everything else to fall in place and then I look at what I want to do with my career. But that doesn't happen. So I think the first thing is to have a clear vision for yourself, say, what do I want from my career? The second thing I'd say is be ready to get out of your comfort zone all the time. You're ready to go that extra mile. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. So I think these are two things that we consciously need to think about when you want to go there and decide what you want to do. And planning becomes a very important deal in this whole thing then. If you have a vision, then you plan things around it. And that's when I think, and these are the things I think we need to really think of when we look at our career.
So you essentially covered not just some of the challenges, but how one can overcome them as well.
Yeah, what I mean is a lack or not enough attention on any of these is what I think is the biggest challenge to not go, getting into being able to shape your career.
Sure. Charusmitha.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Good morning. So I think if I have to talk about two challenges, one would be at a socio-cultural level. The challenge of gender bias that we all hear of. It could be the maternal wall bias, it could be the performance bias or the various hundreds of biases that we see in the system, which is unconscious in nature. So that could be the number one challenge. And number two is, I think, more personal in nature, which is more internal, which I think Sunita attributed to as well, which are your self-limiting beliefs. So it could be guilt, it is about not being able to ask for help, it is about always striving for perfection, it is about having that inner critic or that inner voice always judging you or saying that you're not good enough. So that is probably the number two challenge, which is more internal and personal.
Thank you. Girija, so I would say what Shalini and Charusmitha essentially touched upon are things which women, internally create as challenges for themselves by not planning, by not thinking ahead, by not, prioritizing. From an organizational standpoint, what do you think are the challenges that women face, in terms of reaching their fullest potential?
So, good morning, everybody. And I resonate every word what Sunita was saying. At organization level, I believe two important factors which she also touched upon. One is the diversity, and the other one is inclusive. So those are really, really challenging for various reasons. As we all know, one is definitely unconscious bias, and that is when women leaders at their leadership level should go and make them understand, okay, not that every men are like that, and probably culturally this unconscious bias is there, and some of them they accept it, okay, they do try to correct themselves, and it's ultimately it is all performance driven, right? And that is a very important point that you will have to tell them. So even when recruitment, okay, so there are several challenges, especially in certain sectors, okay, like for example pharma itself, where women employees are not allowed to stay beyond certain time, right? And it is, it is not allowed as per the law. So Biocon is in the process of taking permission, okay, and probably we will work up to 10 o'clock. So we are in the process of taking that, special permission and work for second shift. And definitely we will be giving the, the security and the well-being of the women employees in particular. That is something very important, because this is one of the reason probably, okay, the hiring managers would prefer a man than a woman because of this shift system. So this is something that we would like to bring in, and as a stepping stone, we would like to start with a very small sector within Biocon to see how it is working. So, and we also have a forum called as Biowin, okay, which is Biocon, Women Initiative. So where basically it upholds and drives the diversity is the agenda. There are several initiatives under that, okay, and where we talk about and ensure the, the environment is conducive enough for women, which brings in safety and very, comfortable position to work with. So
sure.
That's very important.
Thank you, Girija. So in terms of challenges, you spoke quite a bit about the unconscious bias. So Kavita, moving to you. So in your organization, Diageo, I think there's a different kind of bias as well, in the sense from, it's a spirits and beverage company, right? So, getting women into Diageo, has that ever been a challenge, and then allowing them to achieve their potential? How has it been?
That's a great question, actually. Hello, everyone. Very pleased to be here and very excited for this interaction. I was actually preparing in my mind what I'm going to talk about in terms of top 2 challenges, but
I threw a curveball. I'm so sorry.
But that's completely fine. And it's interesting, as you said, that Simi, the thought that came to my mind was my own journey, because so I never used to drink before I was 30, like my whole interesting years of my life. Not that now they are not interesting, but I did not drink. And I started drinking at 30, in fact, due to several factors. I was challenging my own beliefs of why have I not had a drink so far. So I was, if a few years later when Diageo called, I was drinking, and the first thought I had was, if I would not have been drinking, I would not have gone for this job, just because I do not believe in the whole concept. And that's actually the fact. There are a lot of, the first question the recruiter asked me was, do you have a problem working for a spirits company? So definitely that is a challenge that we have in terms of attracting the right talent. Now, that doesn't mean everybody who joins Diageo actually drinks. Most of our parties, it's interesting, I was with a consulting organization before, and I'm surprised that I actually drink less now. And a lot of people are not drinking as well. But it's just personal choice. But the interesting thing, I think for me in terms of the challenges, that how much of our beliefs actually restrict us from achieving what we want. And I think all of the panelists have touched upon that. So I'll still go back to the question that you previously asked. As I was thinking about the challenges, I thought of like really external and internal. Now, external are a host of challenges that everybody, Sunita as well as Neha talked about, in terms of the social conditioning we've been having for the generations previously, in terms of the gender bias, which actually reflects, especially as you start overcoming the obstacles to rise up the ladder. I mean, think about it. If women have not been in leadership positions, when you're starting to rise, you're going to be in difficult, complicated situations, complicated projects. There's no right answer, and all of the above, you have men. So if thinking styles are different, if the way you express is different, all of that is going to reflect as obstacles in terms of you starting to rise up, etc. So I think those are the good part about that is there are a host of initiatives like this, as well as externally a lot has been happening on that front. But the bigger one that panelists touched upon is the internal challenges that we all have. I remember I have a 5-year-old son, and before I actually conceived him, my thought was I'm going to leave the job. I was doing really well, but my thought was I'm going to leave the job and I'm not going to continue. So that's the kind of social conditioning I had even after so much of education and doing well. And I think that's a huge challenge that we need to address as women.
Sure. Do not leave before you actually leave, like the way Sheryl Sandberg puts it. All right. So again, I have to go back and, look at what Sunita mentioned in terms of how women need to continuously focus on learning. And, there's this US American author, Alvin Toffler, who puts it very beautifully, irrespective of men or women, which is the illiterate of the 21st century is not someone who can't read or write, but someone who cannot or who is not willing to relearn, unlearn, and learn, right? So my question is to you, Charusmitha, because you play a very important role in learning and development in your organization. So what are the various strategies that you've used, especially for women, to help them in continuously upskilling themselves, focusing on their own learning, not taking, that lackadaisical attitude that most times we,
Sure, yeah. So I think from a skill standpoint, the programs that we have are open for both men and women, because we believe that whether it's your presentation skills, assertive skills, and all the behavioral skills that we talk about is really a necessary skill for all. But the programs that we have, and I would like to talk about a program called Stand Tall, which is a program for women at lead level, because that's where we saw the maximum attrition happening. This is a 6-month journey where we talk or where we work with belief level issues and not really at skill level issues. So all the internal challenges that you just spoke about, whether it's about experiencing a confidence gap or feeling guilty or having that inner critic which is judging you, it's about, the program is all about countering that. We use non-threatening ways like theater and psychodrama, where women come together and they have a space where they can really let their guards down, be themselves, and talk about some of those challenges and find ways to overcome them, and find also that community and know that they're not alone in that journey. They have a development center followed by coaching, and then there's an alumni network. So this is one of the programs, but there are several such opportunities that we have. We have something called as Akamai Technical Academy. This is for various diversity candidates, not just gender. And for women who have not been in technology, or for people who have not had a career in technology but who'd like to have a career in technology, they apply and they go through a 6-month skilling program, and then they get placed as contractors and they converted into full-time employees. That's one of the other programs that we do.
Fantastic. Would you like to share what's going on in Amadeus, Shalini?
I'll be honest that for a long time, maybe till about last year, we didn't have really a special program, around creating women's network and forum and so on. Primarily because a couple of years ago, when we went back to the women and asked them, what is it that you'd want us to do, to help you succeed at work? Do you want us to create networks? Do you want us to have special programs for you and so on? A lot of them actually responded to us saying that, hey, in the organization you have the kind of policies, programs, which are anyway inclusive, it's open to all. So it's up to us to kind of take that forward. So we don't want to have a specific network or program just for women. And we kind of said, okay, that's great. So we'll continue to, do that. And there are many other things in terms of policies, programs, anyway that's in place. And we said we wouldn't do that, right? And we said we were actually quite happy and comfortable. Our scores in a lot of surveys showed that, diversity was scoring really high. So we said, oh, great, we're doing good. And then suddenly we started to realize that in the last couple of years that, the diversity ratio is going down a bit. We were at 30 or so, and then it was coming down. And we said, okay, what's happening now? And that's when we realized this whole aspect around unconscious bias that's probably creeping in and really unconsciously, because probably the managers don't realize it, we didn't realize it. And it all leads, and many things contribute to it, right? I mean, we realized when we talk to managers saying that, oh, okay, now with this new policy that you have put in place where you have a 6-month maternity break along with another 3-4 months that you can extend to. So women are coming back to work only after 10 months, 12 months. So it's really a long time. So it's not working out for my project. Then you realize that when they're hiring, there is, again, an unconscious bias that coming in saying that, we thought it would be better. And then we heard someone say that one of the managers during an interview kept grilling, a lady candidate saying that, oh, this job is really tough. And it means you have to put in a lot of late hours. Would you be okay? Will it be okay? You have a child. And the lady actually came back and told us that, why was I being asked all these things? Would you ask the same thing to a male candidate if he were to apply?
Precisely. I mean, so anything to deter the woman from applying.
Absolutely. And that's when we have gone back and said that probably sensitization and orienting our managers and leaders to actually understand what it means to be really inclusive. How do you kind of, create an ecosystem where women can thrive? So more than women, we are actually looking at sensitizing leaders and male colleagues and managers on this aspect so that they're able to, really be...
It's a common feedback, right? So when we are training women, they say, hey, you know what, are you training the men also?
Absolutely.
To make it inclusive and, help us in our growth. So,
Simi, if I can here. If I can add on, okay, what exactly we do at Biocon, okay, because Biocon as a company, we strongly believe in empowering women. So what we have done is, we have the women, we have selected women, employees who are already at a leadership level, to give them more opportunities and also to empower and grow up to the next level. We have come up with a program and where we have tied up with Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. Okay, they were staying there for weeks and they have undergone that course. That as phase 1. And post that, after phase 2, we have done a 360-degree feedback with the reporting manager, peers, and the juniors as phase 2. Now they are undergoing a mentoring program within Biocon. So this is the opportunity where we really believe that women should come up, okay? And this is the opportunity, whatever may be the reason for their inability, okay, just to ensure that professionally they do not have any kind of challenges, and give that equality and give that opportunity for each one of them. So this is something that we have done as a company.
So mentoring is a very interesting point you bring up, Girija. So in organizations that are filled up with 70% men, right? So most of the mentors may turn up to be men. Yeah, because again, in leadership roles, there are men who are filling most of the seats. So,
which is not a bad thing.
Which is not a bad thing at all.
According to me, that's fantastic, isn't it? They being a mentor for a woman is actually fantastic. That means they are accepting, they are making them, giving them an opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think it's very good.
Absolutely. So, also the recent hashtag #MeToo, where a lot of men today are slightly deterred from mentoring women. I'm not sure how good that thought holds, but in your organizations, what are you doing to encourage men to become sponsors, to become allies, to become mentors? What are you doing? And I would like each one of you to take a step. Maybe Kavita?
Yeah, sure. I think at Diageo, one of the biggest priority for us as a business has been inclusion and diversity. And in fact, we're very proud of our achievements because we are trying to drive it top down, like at the executive level. And this is one of the most talked about things from our CHRO and everything. And just sharing one achievement that we had recently. In last year, globally, we were actually ranked as 4th most diverse and inclusive organization. Last year. And we actually want to, we've been increasing in terms of how we are getting to the top position. That's our ambition, to be at the top. Just some stats to share. At our executive level, 40% women representation. At our senior leadership roles, 34% right now, and we have aggressive target of achieving 40% by 2025. So the reason I'm sharing these stats is when we set targets at the senior level like this, you're bound to drive the behaviors that would be required.
What gets measured gets done.
Exactly. What gets measured gets done. So, in fact, every offsite that we do, every meeting that we do where we get leaders across, we are actually taking that opportunity to sensitize men. And in fact, I would like to share a quick example that came to our minds. We had an offsite, leadership offsite, where middle-level managers and leaders were there. And, we were playing a game where they were all in a circle, and there were about 35% women in that group. And it was facilitated by an external vendor. And the game was simply that, you have to pass the ball to somebody and say something. It was just kind of, driving energy in the team. And it was interesting, one of the recruiters, Jags, who's here today at the Diageo booth, and I were just standing side by side, and we were like, did you notice in the last 10 rounds, the ball started with a man and nobody gave it to a woman? We were just observing. And it took like almost 10 rounds for a man to finally give that ball, pass that ball to a woman, and then women gave it back to the man. And I think in the whole round, only 2 times was when a man gave it to a woman. Only 2 times when a woman actually held the ball.
Bias in action.
And that was exactly what we then pointed out to the group. Did you see that? It wasn't, of course, conscious, right? It wasn't like men were like, no, I'm not going to give it to the women. But it's just how they feel more comfortable with each other, because that's how they have been working in the whole last few years. So there is a deliberate effort that needs to happen at every single level of the organization to make that change. And that's what we believe in Diageo. Absolutely. So it is top down as well as bottom up for us.
Absolutely. In fact, the biggest, thing with unconscious bias is that, we like people who like us or who are like us. So, that's going on in that game of yours and all of that. All right. So, yes, Charusmitha.
Sure. So, I think I'll answer your question in 2 folds. One, you asked about the mentoring program. So, we were very conflicted, like Shalini, you were talking about, whether we wanted a women-only mentoring program or we wanted it to open it for all. So, we really took it as a implicit goal to have diverse candidates. But we opened a mentoring program which was open for all. This is the 4th year, and we've got recognition from ATD and Brandon Hall. It's been very successful. And I'm very happy to see that we started with 10% women when we piloted it back 4 years ago. And in year 2, it moved from 10% to 30%. And today we have 40% representation, both as mentors and mentees in the program. So I think it's a good thing to open it for all and to create that inclusion, and for women to be mentors for men and to seek out mentors in men. And it's not that if you're a woman, you should have only a woman mentor or vice versa. That's one point. And for the second part of what you asked on how do we engage male allies, I think one of the most important things is to create that psychological safety for men to not only be supporters but also to express their dissent or disagreement, not just for men but for everyone. And I think that's something that we've been consciously doing at Akamai. We have safe space workshops. We have, for example, in the recent Women's Day, we didn't do the usual cupcakes or roses, but we celebrated an entire week of what we called as a Think Equal campaign, where we engaged the majority. It was open to all, where we spoke about history, where we gave little challenges, what we called as inclusion nudges, which were kept as little cards at everybody's desk, and everybody could participate. And almost 40% of the organization really came together, solved those challenges, pinned up those boards, and it was really a bottoms-up approach where everybody got engaged. So important to create the space for people to express their disagreement and dissent, as much as you also have allies and champions in the workspace.
So I'm connecting offline with you to understand how you went about, because when we celebrate Women's Day and something else dates, we lose the inclusion, because then it's just again very exclusive event. So
I think it causes more exclusion than inclusion.
It causes more exclusion. That's when more men feel, why is there a Women's Day? Why not celebrate Men's Day? Haven't we heard that really? Yeah, and sometimes I don't have an answer to that, right? So I think that's a good way of celebrating.
So,
Shalini.
I'll give an example which is actually in my own team. So if you look at HR teams, usually they are quite women oriented, dominated and so on. And then you sometimes lack a different perspective in the team. So this year we launched a mentoring program for my own team with some of the high pots in my own team. And we picked male mentors from the business to mentor them. So that was a very conscious way of giving two different dimensions. One was to bring in a different kind of a thought perspective that probably male mentors would give them. And secondly, of course, it was to give them exposure to the business side of things, being in HR. So I think that's a program which is, and it's a different kind of a diversity challenge, right? Because a lot of time HR teams are so dominated by women that we really have diversity issues in thought and in actions, and inclusivity in the other way. And I really feel sad for a lot of guys who are there in my team, saying they really feel left out in a lot of accounts. But this was a different kind of a program, and it was done in this fashion to kind of get mentoring from men, and for them to get a perspective of how do you actually look at women in a different function, which is not engineering, which is not R&D, but how do you really mentor them?
I mean, God knows women just need role models. I mean, that's how, I have hung around, if I may call it this way, for the last 15 years in the corporate workplace. Sunita isn't around here, but Sunita's husband, Isaac, continues to be in Wipro, and they both continue to be HR leaders in Wipro. And I remember, 10 years ago, Isaac was my mentor, right? And I was a new mother, and there weren't any creches around, and there wasn't any Uber, Ola that, you quickly book, and, you receive a call from your mother-in-law, the child is crying, and you have absolutely no idea how to get back home, because the Wipros and the Infosys of the world would be in far-flung areas. But, I just today cannot, forget the role that Isaac played in my career. And I so wish Sunita was here, because I would, he made some pertinent points. He said, Simi, it's okay to feel a little, guilty, but it's okay, be a little selfish, extract that last bit from your mother-in-law, right? At one point in time, I had to leave my daughter in Bangalore while I was pursuing my career in Wipro in Pune. That was a heart-wrenching decision, but the offer or the role that I had got in Wipro was something I did not want to let go of. At that point in time, Isaac said, you know what, Simi? Sunita and I also left our daughter Neha in Cochin when both of us had to focus on our careers. That one example, and everything kind of fell, that villainizing or the victimized mode that we all get into, everything just fell into perspective. So that's how important in my mind male allies can be as well, male sponsors can be as well. So you are from business, regulatory science.
Regulatory science is basically responsible for getting the approvals for selling the drug product in the international market. Right. So I take care of, first in India and then the international market. So I'm responsible for that.
So you are bringing in the diversity, by the way, in this panel, because we are all, HR or L&D folks. So how is the diversity in Biocon in the engineering or the regulatory sciences department? And
I would say it is 60% of women and 40% of men.
Fantastic.
Okay. And if you see across pharma industry, probably I do not know the reason why it is so, most of the regulatory heads are ladies or women. Okay, so because regulatory is expected to be perfect, because it's all about the drug, it's all about the science, because if you need to get an approval, that's very, very important. That's very important. So it is about discipline. You have to be highly disciplined, okay, because that's very important. So you control in a way everybody. You in fact direct or guide all of the department what is needed for me to get an approval. So that is all about regulatory. So maybe it's more inborn within women. Sorry for in case any, I know Pradeep is here, okay, but I do not know the reason, but it just happens to be that way.
Yeah, just like the way it happens to be in HR.
Absolutely.
All right, okay. So,
yeah, but our Biocon HR head is a man who is completely in supportive of this women leadership. And, I'm answering one of your previous question, okay, how do we implement this women leadership within Biocon, where we involve all senior leadership, okay, so they are part of such program and they know the criticality of the importance of bringing in diversity. So they are completely aligned to this.
Perfect, thank you. So I can see there's this green monster that shows me there's little time left before we wrap up, and of course a lot of questions that will come in from the audience as well. So maybe my final question to you all is from your experiences, from the way you have managed your internal monsters, from the way you've managed external factors, a lot of women here, men as well, what would be your message to women who have their eyes set on succeeding, but they will definitely do better, with some tips from each one of you? So, Kavita, would you like to go first?
Sure. I think the first one that I'm very loud without the mic as well. Sorry about that. I think the first one that triggered in my mind as you were talking about your specific case, and that's a case I think with a lot of women, in terms of just not being surrounded by people who actually face the similar challenges or have the courage or aspirations to the similar level. I sometimes find myself amongst women who are actually thinking that me having a job, having a son, and having a good job at a good role, having a son, and pursuing my personal goals in terms of fitness, etc., is a big deal. And at times I'm like, maybe I'm special, and then I reflect I'm not. And that's when that's what I think happens with a lot of us, that we have to consciously make an effort to surround ourselves with those people. And the best part about today is we have the technology to do that. I remember the time when I started to invest most in myself, as Sunita was mentioning, was in fact when I was on my maternity leave. This is not what I want to do forever in my life. So that was when I, started. That was the first time I ever heard a podcast. I did not even know there was a podcast that you can just hear while feeding your baby. So I used to just spend time listening to different podcasts, different women, different men.
That's amazing. That's a very good tip.
And I think that just changes everything, because if they say that you become the average of 5 people you spend the most time with. So each of us should think about that who are those 5 people we're spending the most time with, and do we want to become the average of that, or do we want to maybe increase the average? And with the technology, you can increase it by choosing to spend your time with, all the material out there, all the people you consider yourselves role model for yourself. So that's one. The second one that I'd really want to talk about, especially as I think we talked a lot about the conscious unconscious bias, right? So I think we have dual role to play. One is our own role in terms of aspiring to be where we want to be and our journey towards that and overcoming the internal beliefs. But the second one, we are also probably mothers and people who are playing a huge role in terms of the society. So as individuals, we need to think about how we are raising our daughters and our sons. Are we conditioning the same things like we've been doing? It's interesting because my son picked up the blue and pink thing already in like 5 years, and I'm just thinking, what are we doing wrong that actually they are turning out to be the same way? So if we don't want our next generation to be facing and talking about the same things like we're doing right now, then we need to play a huge role in terms of watching how our thoughts and actions and what we speak actually drives those behaviors and the unconscious and conscious bias, because those are the people who will go and affect women otherwise in some way or the other through this. So
Completely.
those would be two.
Sometimes we are not in control, right? I mean, again, going back to Sunita's example of finding the right partner, I mean, not always do we get it right. So if we can start investing as sisters, as mothers, and as spouses as well, to help men also become equal partners, keeping the future in mind, right? Thank you.
And I would just like to summarize by saying you really can have it all. I mean, only in your mind you're limiting yourself. That's it. The only one factor that is stopping you from achieving whatever you want to achieve is your own belief system. And if you can be deliberate about, some of these are so subconscious that you're not realizing that you just believe something because you've been listening to it for all this while. So my only urge would be that you really think about what beliefs have you had and have just, picked up and internalized so well that now you're not even challenging them. So you really can have it all and have the life that you want. It's just about you wanting it and pursuing it.
Thank you. And the universe will, conspire to make it happen. Yes, Shalini.
Ladies, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but we would like to also take questions from the
from the audience. Perfect. So
Yeah.
we have about 8 minutes. So
yeah.
shall
Shall
we
I
open?
tell you the
Absolutely.
question?
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got a question from Rameshwari. If you freelance during your career break, would that be considered as experience in all of your organizations?
So the question is that if you freelance during your career break, would that
Be considered
be considered
experience?
as experience?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I participated in a mentorship program, in the industry, and there were a lot of women who actually came up and said that during my maternity break, I actually started to freelance and do something. So, and would that be something that you would be interested in? And absolutely, why not? Because that's something that, you have invested in. It shows you're interested in, continuously upskilling yourself and being engaged and learning new things even while you're on maternity. And definitely adds an edge to your profile, and it means you're in touch with what's going on latest, in your area of work. And I would definitely say that as an organization, we are very open to that.
Excellent. Thank you. Another question from Meera Nair. She has two actually. Number one, what are the employer's expectations from women who are returning to work? And number two, what is the focus of internships in these programs? Are they tailored towards technology or leadership skills? As I believe a good portion may be from middle management level. This is just as a guess. I think she's trying to say that, are you focusing on only middle management women returning to work? Or do you look at a broad spectrum of levels of women returning to work? And do you have programs within your companies that apply to them?
No, yeah, probably I can take that. Okay, so at least at Biocon, we definitely, on a case-to-case basis, we do look at the, the employees who wants to come back after a break. So definitely that is something that can be considered, and it will be considered.
Okay, excellent. And the second question was, what is the focus of, I'll come closer for you, the internships in these programs? Are they tailored towards technology or leadership skills? Your returnee internship programs or your returning programs for
Do
women?
any one of you have this in your organizations you'd like to talk about?
I don't think we have the dedicated program, although I may not have the entire information. But the booth here, the recruiter there would actually know more. But from our organization perspective, we are actually partnering with things like Jobs for Her, where we are actually going in and specifically targeting women who are returning from work. But we don't have a dedicated program that I can talk about. And the focus for the programs is absolutely across data analytics, technology, as well as HR and finance controllership. So it's pretty much diverse.
So all of it.
So I would like to
most organizations, I mean, I'm just not speaking about Amadeus, but I think most organizations who have these internship program for returning mothers and or people coming back from a sabbatical is usually tailored to different verticals. I mean, it could be in technology, it could be in HR. It usually is to do with what roles are available in the organization, because most of these programs are designed in a fashion where you do an internship, and if you fit in well in the culture of the company, and the company, it works well both ways, then you actually are supposed to move on and should be able to get into a permanent role. So the idea is to just bridge that gap that you've gone through and build some confidence for you to actually make the first step. So mostly it's usually tailored around the roles that are actually available in the organization.
Okay.
both leadership as well as technical.
As well as technology. Excellent. And I think we have time for one more question. How are organizations creating bias-free ecosystems at the front line, hiring managers within the workplace to support a restarter and a riser, especially when one restarts at a short-handed position and is performing exceeding expectations?
Okay, I can take that. So at Akamai, one of the things that we do at a hiring level is pay parity. We don't ask about what you're currently making or what was your latest salary. We always look at the experience.
This is very progressive, I must say.
And we match it to the industry standard. So your gender really doesn't play a role there. Irrespective of your gender, it's really about your experience and skills that you bring to the table. So that's one of the hiring practices that we do. And we also have sensitization workshops on what could be some of the biases that can exist at hiring level. So all hiring managers go through programs like that. So these are a couple of things.
Excellent.
I can just add a bit to that, because what we realized is that we also look at pay parity and so on. So for a long time we were very happy saying that we are really doing well in terms of pay parity, and that's the culture of the organization and so on. And when we scratched the surface a bit more and we went deeper, we realized that women seem to be getting less of the top rating, let's say, whatever, than the men. So then we said, there seems to be an issue behind the pay parity, which could be, are women, being assessed in the same fashion in terms of performance in a team as compared to men? Is it because, again, of unconscious bias? Is it because, somebody was on a maternity break during that year and so on? So then we started doing that, and again, sensitizing back with the managers to actually, because a lot of your pay is also dependent on your performance, your growth and so on. And if that's dependent on this factor, so then you need to address this. So it's
So tracing back sometimes.
And I think the other thing is to be able to give a diverse pool of candidates for hiring managers. So when there is an opening, are you providing enough women as well as men based on whatever the opening? And that's one of the things that we do really religiously, where whatever the opening is, there is almost a 50-50 pool which is presented.
So we have conducted a workshop for all hiring managers at the senior managers level, and specifically to address this diversity and also the unconscious bias. And the outcome of that workshop, if you really see, there is so much of learning into that, and that is something that we are working towards to set things right. So it is a mandatory training for all hiring managers.
In fact, in my organization, it's a mandatory training for all employees. So it's a 4-hour workshop that they have to go through. And I think the message that we share in the workshop is that unconscious bias is here to stay, is not something that is easily eliminated. And I don't think our objective is also to really eliminate it, but to make people cognizant and make people identify that there's a filter that could come in the way of your hiring decision, promotion decision, so on and so forth. The other thing that's very important is to play a little bit of policing role. In my organization, again, 32% is the gender diversity. And I took the promotion data for the last 1 year to just see how's gender diversity. I mean, it's as simple, parameter to watch out for. And clearly there was some form of imbalance. So managers were promoting just about 20% women, where they could possibly, do more. So the message went out to all the leaders that let's have some more gender balance in our promotions. We didn't say anything beyond that. We didn't put any more conditions, and quarter after quarter, we are seeing 36% gender diversity in promotions, 42%. So sometimes all you need to do is just tell people that, hey, are you really looking at how you're doing things? And there wasn't a single exception approval, by the way, which means that, this is a woman, let me promote her, she's falling short. No, so which means that there's potential available, unpolished diamonds, as we may call it. And when you give certain targets to leaders, that's when they use the right lenses to start spotting, and there is talent, right? So yeah, that's how we do it in Sutherland.
Yeah. It should be a performance-driven culture.
Absolutely.
I mean,
other's the business case falls, right?
Absolutely.
Because if you're not promoting a woman based on her merit, and then she fails in the job, and then the stereotypical comment that, there you go, a woman, I told you not to promote her and she's failed. So it's never a good idea to compromise on merit. Yeah. Any other questions?
That's it for today.